he went out one morning during the summer holidays, went off with his friends and his brother. He came back that evening and his eyes were all running and his nose was running and he had a pain in his head. And he used to suffer from hay fever and sinuses and stuff. So Jane said to him, "What were you doing?" "Oh, sure, I was above with the lads lying on the grass." "You were lying above in the grass, now you're after setting off your sinuses now in the hay fever again."
My father found a pea-sized lump at the top of his leg in April 2015, and he went to the doctor the next day, and within 2 weeks he was in hospital, and they had referred him to an oncologist in Waterford, and then he was referred to Kappa to have it removed. It was lying on his artery, but his artery had made its own bypass around it for the blood to still circulate. So this is what confused him. He was told he had cancer, but at this stage they still didn't know it was sarcoma, and they didn't know how severe it was until they removed it, and then they sent it away to be analysed. And then we were told he had sarcoma. But we didn't know what sarcoma was. To us, cancer is cancer. It was just another name on a different kind of cancer.
David was diagnosed in April 2014. He actually started suffering with a pain in his chest in May 2013, and I took him to the GP. We got a letter to go and have an x-ray done in the hospital. We had the x-ray done, and they came back and said that the x-ray was fine, but he still continued on and off. He would have pain, he could have it today, he mightn't have it for weeks, and then it would just come back. 11 months later, he came in one day, he was doing a PLC course, and just didn't feel well at all, and was just a very funny grey colour. And I thought, okay, David, into the car, we need to go, you're not well.
Mum was sick over Christmas, and we just thought it was like a vomiting bug. That's what we thought. And like she was coughing and that, but it just seemed like my mum worked with children, and we just thought, working with children, you pick up things, and we just thought that it was normal. Like, she had aches in her leg. Like, I remember we went up to Dundrum shopping, and Mum had to keep sitting down. She was like, "I feel real fluey, like my legs are hurting." But at that time we didn't know, but that was the cancer. It was paralysing her. It was taking over. So she went and got blood tests because she just wasn't getting better. Then it showed up that her white blood cells, like, it showed up that there was something there. So she had to go and get checked. So we brought her for an MRI.
He got sick at home one evening. We were watching a film, and he went down to the toilet and came back up and didn't come back in. We had it on pause, and I shouted for him to come back in, and he was just sitting in the chair in the kitchen, and his stomach was just in a total spasm. So I rang the doctor, the off-call doctors, and they actually got me to look at his nails. They thought it was a heart attack he was after having, but it wasn't. And then they thought it was a kidney stone. So the ambulance was called, and I remember going into the back of the ambulance, and the 3 lads were small. And they were just there standing, looking at us going away. It was the first time anything like that ever happened to us. So that was heartbreaking. But when we went to the hospital, then they did tests, and I remember I stayed in the hospital all day with him, and they never came back with the results. They were waiting for the results. So I was just on my way home, and he rang me and said the doctor came in, but he'll be in the morning. So when we went in the morning, I was saying, kidney stone, the kidney, whatever, which is going to be the easiest. And he just sat us down and he said, "You have a large tumour in your stomach," he said, "and there's nothing I can do about it."
About 11 months before he was diagnosed, he had a lump on his neck. And we brought him to the doctor, and they brought him he was sent into the hospital, and they done tests on him, and they told us that he had fatty deposits on his lymph nodes, but that it was normal for a teenage boy to have fatty deposits on his lymph nodes, and that it was probably something to do with his thyroid. His eye started to swell. His left eye started to swell all around. So the doctor sent him to Waterford, brought him down to Waterford. The eye specialist checked his eye. He said that found something at the back of his eye. So he was sent for
A
a biopsy then. And by the time the biopsy was done, his eye was practically hanging out of his head. They were talking about stitching up his eyelid to hold in his eye. So we had to wait for 10 days, for the result of the biopsy to come back. Came back then that he had sarcoma,
rhabdomyosarcoma in the back of his eye.
In the back of his eye.
They brought him in and ran an ECG and different things on him, and because I just said he had pains in his chest, because I knew he needed to be seen quick, and I knew if I went in and just said we needed an x-ray repeated, we would have been left for hours in the waiting room. So I said he had chest pain, and in we went, and eventually they done bloods. Nothing had showed in those bloods. He had an x-ray, and they came back then and they were shocked when they pulled the x-ray from 11 months later. It was actually there. We went home that night anyway, and David stayed overnight in the hospital, and the next morning he was due to have a CT scan, and he had the CT scan, and then a couple of hours after the CT scan we were asked to go into a room, myself and David, and we were given then the awful news that he had a tumour and it wasn't good. He had it in the rib cage, but to me, okay, it was a tumour and it was cancer, and that's as far as I knew, until we got to meet with Dr. Alexa Patuzzi, where she sat down, and actually that's the first time I ever heard the word sarcoma mentioned. I hadn't got a clue what the lady was talking about, and she sat us down. She explained that it was sarcoma. It was Ewing sarcoma, the family that it came from, what type of tumour it was. She explained absolutely everything in detail, and basically when they done the bone scan on him, it was in every single bone from head to toe. It had just spread right through his body.
My sister Nicola, my dad and my auntie Nolian, they went over to the doctors. My mum said that she wasn't going over for the results of the MRI. She's like, I'm not going. But you knew it was bad because our doctor came home with them. He just sat on the sofa, and I'll never forget my mum just sitting there, and I was just holding her hand because she got a fright when she saw him come in, and she was like, oh Jesus, I'm dying. And the doctor was like, listen, like, it is cancer. And I just remember my mum's hand getting tighter and tighter on mine, and he was like, it is cancer, it's on the kidney, there's another tumour in your stomach, but we need you to go into hospital and we need you to get checked, and let's figure out what we do from here.
His type of cancer was mostly in children. It was osteosarcoma, but children get it on the bone, whereas adults get it in their soft tissue. And by this stage though, it had gone to his lungs. We knew once it had gone to the lungs it was never going to be cured, but we always thought he was going to be around for a long time with treatment. It was going to keep him going, maintain it, like so. And his death came just as an awful shock to us.
When he was first diagnosed in Limerick, they didn't know it was sarcoma. It was only when he went to Tala and they removed the tumour. They obviously did biopsies or whatever at that stage, and they realised then it was liposarcoma. So the tumour was about 15 pounds in weight when it was removed, and it was 29 centimetres long. It was reoccurring basically, so it did reoccur a couple of times. He went through a good few operations. He had a heart bypass in the middle of it, and then he had both chemo and radiation. But he was 10.5 years he got since the day he was diagnosed.
It only came apparent how big the tumours were when Mum got really sick and she started to lose an awful lot of weight in her arms and her face, and one of them was connected to one of her kidneys, and then there was another one. I saw the MRI, and the other one was the size of a rugby ball inside her stomach. They didn't know it was sarcoma at this stage. They were a bit unsure of what cancer it was. Our mum, she walked into the hospital. She came out in a wheelchair. She was like, the cancer basically paralysed her.
I'd taken him home from hospital on the 10th of April, where basically we thought he was a goner. We had to nearly fight to get him out of the hospital that day because we wanted to bring him home, and they said, look, he's not even going to last 10 minutes. Probably won't even last 10 minutes in an ambulance. You probably won't even get him out of the ambulance. But our thing was, He wanted to be home and we wanted him to be home because that's what he wanted. He kept saying that was his house and he wanted to be home and that was that. So for somebody that wasn't going to last 10 minutes in an ambulance, lived on for another 8 days, he was gone when he was gone and that was it. Nobody was taking him any sooner, you know. And I did sit with Dr. Pertuzzi and I thought, do you know, in the forced x-ray, had I gotten Dava here in that forced x-ray, and she said herself, things would have been an awful lot different.
I remember the last 2 weeks before he died. He was 6'3". He was big. He could throw me around the place. And I remember taking him from the sofa in the sitting room in my arms, and all he was skin and bone. He was like something out of Auschwitz, out of a concentration camp. There was nothing left of him. And I carried him up the stairs. And his head just... He hadn't even the strength to hold up his head. At the end, he hadn't even the strength to turn over in the bed. We had to turn him from one side to the other. When he'd get sore on one side, we'd turn him back over to the other side. Nobody should see that. Nobody should watch their child go to that stage, and no child should ever have to go to that stage.
I don't think there's enough understanding of what causes sarcoma, or like, is it your diet, is it your lifestyle? Because my father was always healthy, always, you know, he's eating veg and he's never into eating junk food, he was never into eating rubbish. He was just a plain and simple eater, and he still ended up, so you don't know. There needs to be more research done to what causes sarcoma, because there's so many different types of it as well. Like,
I've never witnessed a cancer so powerful and so fast, and to completely take everything away from one person, like in a matter of months. Like it literally, like, Mum died on the 23rd of April, so it was literally 2 months that she was diagnosed with cancer, not even their sarcoma, and it had taken her.
He fought until the very last minute. I mean, even the last weekend we were in the hospital with him, he just kept saying no, he just wanted to go home, He turned to Morris and he just said, Morris, will you take me home? But I'm not too sure if he really knew kind of what was happening at that point. He was on quite a lot of medication and morphine and stuff, but all he wanted to do was go home. That's always where he wanted to be.
My name's Niamh and I'm 25. I was first diagnosed on the 9th of December 2015. Well, I first noticed the lump in probably about May 15. I went to the doctor and she kind of thought it was just a cyst. I didn't go back to the doctor, and so it was September by the time I went back. I couldn't really see the swelling. I could, in a way, compared to my left leg, but it was family members that were going, Niamh, it's getting a bit swollen now. So I went to the doctor and he referred me to get an MRI, and then referred me to a surgeon in the sports clinic. He seen the scans and gave me a phone call and said he didn't deal with my condition. So I kind of knew there was something behind it. Never led to sarcoma. There was always, the word cancer was there, but there was never sarcoma, never heard of it before. My surgeon had said that if the tumour didn't reduce in size, it was too close to my knee for him to be able to take it out without amputation. To get cancer is terrible. To get a rare form of cancer that only affects 250 people in Ireland a year, it's scary. Who do you go to? How to get the right doctors? As I said, I was lucky. I got all my right doctors one after another, and it's the reason I'm sitting here today, hopefully a year cancer free. Sarcoma's hard in a way that if you don't catch it in time, it's so aggressive, it'll spread, and once it spreads, that's it. You kind of don't have, you've no comeback from it then. So my advice would be definitely anything at all, any little lumps, you don't feel right, go get it checked.